Hello everyone, Sylvan Bard here, and welcome to another Top 10 list. We all have a list of movies that we know are bad, but we can't help but watch them almost every time. And many people call them guilty pleasures. They're so bad, they're good. They don't offer a lot, but they're somehow entertaining. They have moments and scenarios that you just don't get, but you have to question why and how these makers do this. And today, I'll be going over my list of so bad they're good movies. So, let's take a look at the one straight from my closet of shame. This is my top 10 guilty pleasures. Number 10. Inspector Gadget. I've already did a review of this before, so you can look into that one for more. But this is one film that I used to love as a kid. I loved its speed, I loved its zany antics, and I loved the effects. But nowadays the crazy nature of it wore off and many situations became too awkward for me. Yet, as a live-action origin story for an 80s cartoon series, I still think it's okay at best. Of course, at the time I saw it, I wasn't aware of the show until high school or college. And now that I know of it, and in comparison to the film, it's harmless. It's not the worst adaptation, but it's not the best either. For me, it's fine enough for the effects and energy, but not so much for the rest. And it's one film where enjoying it in the past just makes me appreciate it in the future. Just only by a little. Number 9. Wild Wild West. Coming from the same team that did Men in Black, and based on the 1960s series The Wild Wild West, the movie does have a few funny moments and some good visual and practical effects. But everything else doesn't quite fit. Yet, it's not too much of a bore. It's set in 1869, 4 years after the Civil War, when a scientist is found decapitated, and President Ulysses Grant hires 2 men to solve the case. A gunslinging Civil War veteran named James West, and inventor/disguiser U.S. Marshal Artemus Gordon. The 2 believe that General Bloodbath McGrath was the culprit, but he really wasn't. And as they find out that Dr. Arliss Lovelace was behind it all, James and Artemis must stop Lovelace before he unleashes his massive weapon. Again, there are things that I like in this film. Outside of the effects, the actors are good, and the 1860s style of mechanics are good as well. And there is plenty of talk about the machine Lovelace is building and what it contains. And the payoff for all its build-up didn't disappoint me. It looks really cool and it's a nice setup for the climax. But the characters' motivations don't add up and it sort of falls flat in its humor. Yet it's creative in design, but also being written by the co-writers of Roger Rabbit and The Grinch, there's no memorable lines they wrote, and the only thing memorable from them is the giant mechanical spider. So overall, it's not impressive, but it's kind of fun. It fails in important areas, but it succeeds in others. Number 8. Jingle All the Way. Like everybody around the holidays, I just love watching Christmas movies. But this one is so unmerry in its holiday spirit that, at times, it can be funny, but not a whole lot. A workaholic father named Howard Langston misses out on his son, Jamie's karate practice, and decides to make things up by getting Jamie a Turbo Man toy for Christmas. But on Christmas Eve, Howard rushes from store to store trying to find a Turbo Man that isn't sold out, and has competition with a mailman named Myron for the same toy. And that's the majority of it. It was fine for me that I liked the film, mostly for Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I hate stories that involve the main character constantly having things go wrong for him. I'm not only supposed to feel sorry for him, but it goes too far and becomes too much that it just feels painful. However, some of the comedy is good, especially with the climax, which was really funny when I first saw it. But whether the film made me laugh or not, most of it is sort of a letdown. Like again, with Howard not doing so well. And though I liked it when I was young, it's not one I'd watch every Christmas season. But even with the film's biggest flaw for me, I can't help but say that I got a little enjoyment out of it. Even if it is little. Number 7. Mouse Hunt. This is another film that I enjoyed as a kid. I loved the comedy and I liked the setup. But nowadays it's nothing special. It's very underrated and fun at times, but it's not any kind of classic. Two brothers named Ernie and Lars inherit both an old house and their father's string factory after their father died. But after Ernie loses his job as a restaurant owner, the brothers decide to live in the house and discover that the building is worth a fortune. So while redecorating the house, a mouse, who is the only living resident of it, constantly thwarts the two of trying to get rid of it before the auction. All while the string factory goes on strike and Ernie tries to sell it, despite Lars' promise to his father not to sell it. Yeah, its story is all over the place, but it is a fine setup. And the film for me makes it feel like a cross between Laurel and Hardy and Tom and Jerry if you think about it. But some of the comedy isn't all funny, and the film constantly goes everywhere with no sense of direction. Yet I'm still glad I saw it, and it still reminds me of why I liked it to begin with. There's nothing terrible about it, yet I could get much of it, even if it's lacking. It's still an underrated film nonetheless and needs more attention, but just not a whole lot of it. Number 6. Ghostbusters 2. Of course, like everyone, I do enjoy the first Ghostbusters movie. It has fun lines, great effects, and a nice setup. But with the sequel, it's mostly repeating the first film, with a new villain added. It's 4 years after the Ghostbusters saved New York City, and not only did they went out of business, but they went their separate ways. But the sewers of the city are filled with slime, which connects to the museum where Vigo, a 12th century tyrant, plans to not only raise the slime to unleash a herd of ghosts, but to also possess Dana Barrett's baby son named Oscar, with the help of Dana's boss Janos Bulhan. And so the Ghostbusters return to stop him from doing so. On New Year's Eve of all days. Again, it's a nice setup, but the whole film and plot is roughly the same as the first film. It still has the memorable characters and fun effects, but how the Ghostbusters got out of business isn't explained well enough, and the mayor's assistant is not the best character, and Dana didn't need to marry another guy. I used to enjoy this film more than the first one, but with watching it years later, I sort of changed my mind. I still think it's a fine film, but it's hard to enjoy when it's recycled and some moments aren't given much thought. But either way, it's still okay. Now with the trailer to the new Ghostbusters movie, I really didn't know what to think about it. Number 5. Monkeybone. As much as I enjoy Henry Selick as an animation director, his take on live action is really odd, even when mixing it with animation. And this one is no exception. A cartoonist named Stu Miley gets in a coma after a car accident, and while in this state, he's taken to a place called Downtown, which is a purgatory-like state filled with mythical creatures and such that enjoy nightmares. But Stu wants to get back after finding out that his sister is going to pull the plug on him. So he and his own cartoon creation, a crude monkey named Monkeybone, work together to thwart death until Monkeybone himself betrays Stu and ends up taking over Stu's body to cause havoc. And so Stu himself must find a way to get out in order to stop his creation. The effects for the film are pretty impressive, but the comedy really lacks even when Monkeybone is in Stu's body. And some of the things don't add up, like why would Stu's sister even pull the plug? There's not much of an explanation unless it's a case of sibling rivalry. And why on earth would the romantic lead give Stu more nightmares? It just bothers me. And there are moments that are weird and awkward, even for Selick. But it's partly enjoyable for the effects, designs, and imagination. It's one I really want to like, but it's hard with all the bizarre and questionable situations. It's impressive to watch, but everything else is just really odd. Number 4. Evolution. Though many people consider this to be a Ghostbusters ripoff, even though the director himself also did this, I don't quite see it as that. But in any case, it's really out there. When a meteorite crash lands on Earth, two college professors, Dr. Ira Kane and Professor Harry Phineas Block, check out the meteorite and discover that the organisms inside are alien life forms that evolve very rapidly and become more dangerous. But when the meteor site is taken over by the government, the two professors, along with a firefighting trainee named Wayne Gray and a government scientist named Dr. Allison Reed, must stop the life forms before Earth is destroyed. This is one movie that I'm not even sure about. Okay, there's a funny moment or gross out moment that I like once in a while, But like Monkey Bone, the comedy sometimes lacks when it needs to be. Yet, the designs and effects of the evolving creatures are fine to look at. But as a whole, it's a really odd film. While I don't see it as a Ghostbusters ripoff, the comedy and characters don't really match to that film. I would watch it once in a while for the effects and the designs of the creatures, and a little of the comedy, but that's very much it. It's not one of Ivan Reitman's best works, but its creativeness is something to admire. Number 3. The Final Destination. Now let me make one thing clear about this. I enjoy the Final Destination series. I enjoy them for some of the build-ups and some of the payoffs, and I enjoy the twists and turns that go into them. But where the first 3 films range from pretty good to I don't really care for it, the 4th entry in the series is enjoyable on how insane the visuals are. And the stories for these movies are similar, except this one begins at a race car track and have various yet nonsensical ways of killing people. The deaths in these movies escalates in an over-the-top fashion that's just crazy, and the premonitions and some of the lines would just give away what the death is even though they don't show who. And even one death is very similar to the first film, and the climax is like the first film as well. Yes, these movies are like the Transformers films on how they're all the same movie, but with this series, I really don't mind watching any time. And its 4th film is just all around insane. Now as for the 5th film, that's as good as the first one. Next one. Number 2. Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. Yes, this is another film I reviewed, so again, there's not going to be much to this. And as a Dr. Seuss fan, I didn't seem to think much about this. The songs are fine, but mostly pointless, his pacing isn't well flowing, and moments from the book aren't that well focused. But with having to think back to it, it's nothing special, but it's all fine. I did like some of the characters, I do like the animation, and yes, Danny DeVito as the Lorax is just perfect. Is it as fun as The Grinch? No. Is it as grand as Horton Hears a Who? No. Is it as crazy as The Cat in the Hat? No. It's just the way it is. An environmental animated film that isn't all bad, nor is it all good. It's sort of a mix of the two. And I would watch it occasionally for Earth Day or Arbor Day. It's not the best Seuss movie in my opinion, but it is mostly okay. And my number 1 guilty pleasure is... Okay, that's it. It can't be. Freddy got fingered! Yes, this is the one. The film that's considered to be one of the worst films of the past 10 years. And yes, I did find it to be not that good. But the more I watch it, the more fascinated I became with it. It's nothing good, but it's so strange in its own world that there's nothing else like it. A man named Gordon Brody lives with his parents and has dreams of being an animator and goes to Hollywood to sell his ideas. But when his ideas don't sell, he continues to live with his parents until he gets an idea to sell, all while driving his father mad for not getting a job and leaving the house. And there's even a romance between Gordon and a wheelchair-bound nurse named Betty, who dreams of working with rockets. And a majority of the film has Gordon do lots of insane and crazy things, and some of it is pretty disgusting. But for me, I just can't help but admire how bizarre many of these moments are. There are moments that every movie has done before, the story and plot for this is completely nonsensical, and I have no idea whether Tom Green's character is someone with special needs, has a childlike mind that can't be controlled, or he's doing it as himself. It's a comedy that doesn't have a lot of laughs, but it's such a marvel of a bad movie that I actually enjoy watching it. And I love it for that. And many of these reasons and plenty more are what makes Freddy Got Fingered my number 1 guilty pleasure. So that's it for now. Thank you for joining me. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Facebook or Twitter. And tune next Wednesday for a new video. Once Upon a Forest. The movie is based on the characters, concept, and Welsh story by Ray Lambert. That's pretty much 10 favorite animated TV shows.
Number 10.